today we are here to talk about chief revenue officers. And we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about CROs behind their backs. So don't tell anybody. We're going to talk about them behind their backs. So it's an interesting topic. I have been spending a lot of time talking to VC firms, talking to a huge amount of fractional CMOs, and it's fantastic the amount of people that are out there. And today I'm going to basically dive into the 8 reasons why CROs, or Chief Revenue Officers, thrive with a fractional CMO. We're going to be doing some stereotyping. We're going to be telling some horror stories. We're making fun of Chief Revenue Officers and Chief Marketing Officers, so don't worry. We'll be especially making fun of CEOs and just having a good old time. So first up, before we dive into too much, if you're on this live stream, if you are here with us live today, would love to have you mention something in the chat about who you are and where you're coming from, as well as, if you've got any interesting horror stories that either with a Chief Revenue Officer, or if you have actually been a Chief Marketing or Chief Revenue Officer and sort of moved from a CMO role to a CRO role, would love to hear about that. So let's join in the conversation. If I see something interesting, I will pick on you. If you're up for it, I might even unmute you and have you share some of your insights. So let's dive in. First question is really, if anybody has been a Chief Revenue Officer, would love to hear, would love to have you pipe in. Daryl, I see that you piped in, that you moved back to the CMO role. I'm going to pick on you in a minute. And in fact, Daryl, you emailed me something that I thought was interesting that I've added into some of the 8 points that I'm going to go through here. So Daryl, cue the music. We might be picking on you if you're okay with that. So the other thing I want to talk about is that during my last couple of months of meeting with a lot of fractional CMOs, meeting with several CROs, and meeting with quite a few VC and PE firms, there is a community of fractional CMOs who are looking for a community of fractional CMOs. And as such, we are looking to start a Slack work group that is designed just for fractional CMOs. It'll be open to anyone that is a fractional CMO. It'll be free and open. And just a pro tip here, at Grow, we are assembling the greatest marketing and growth minds in all of B2B technology. And we do have a small community of a few people who have entered the realm and that are ready to be placed into opportunities. And that's a very small circle. But what I'm talking about is a more open, free and free to communicate and free to join the community of fractional CMOs. There's a lot of us out there and more than I ever imagined. You may know that when I put open a job description looking for a fractional CMO or a team of fractional CMOs, I think we wound up getting like around 600. It was more than 500 and maybe even more than 600. We kind of stopped counting of people that were very interested in fractional CMO and specifically in B2B technology, which is crazy and awesome, but crazy. So if you are up for being a part of that fractional CMO Slack work group that we are in the process of building, let me know. Send me an email, brett@growpowerful.io, or hit me up on LinkedIn or, carrier pigeon, however else you want to get a hold of me. I'd love to know if that's something interesting to you and would love to know if you want to be a part of it. And if so, it is something we're definitely going to probably prioritize to launch sooner rather than later. Yep. And it's just popped up my email there in the chat, brett@growpowerful.io. This is also a great time to talk about the fact that we've got a lot of shows coming up. We've got the beauty of shorter term ICMO engagements, and I can talk about that in my experience. And I'd love to have others talk about the shorter engagements and the pros of that. We're also going to talk about the process we have for transitioning out of an engagement. We want to transition out by design. Now, obviously, we don't want to do it after the first couple of weeks, but we want to talk about the process where we transition out. So I think that'll be a good open and free discussion. So the other thing I will say here is that we're having, I think in early June, a topic that's more fintech related, storytelling and fintech, with Mr. FinTechFanboy.com himself. So that should be fun. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about CROs. What are we talking about today? We're talking about making fun of CROs. What are we talking about today? We're talking about making fun of CMOs and everybody that is a C something O. So this is the 8 reasons why CROs thrive with a fractional CMO. I am hoping that you agree or disagree. And if you are very passionate about disagreeing with one of my points that I say, raise your hand, put something in the chat, and we will promote you to a panelist to get your insights, to get your input. So here we go. Reason number 1, and by the way, these are in no particular order. But reason number 1, let me give you a little bit of backstory. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, B2B technology companies would take a VP of sales, and in order to make them feel really, really good and feel like they're important and try to keep them on board, they would promote them to VP of sales and marketing. Or a VP of sales would come in, gain the confidence of the CEO and the board, and the company really didn't know what to do with marketing because nobody understood marketing 20 years ago, and they're starting to understand the power of marketing now. And so they would say, well, if it's not going to be like product-oriented marketing, and it needs to be like revenue and sales-oriented marketing, then let's just put it under the VP of sales and marketing because we don't really know what to do. We'll put the product managers under the technology world. We'll put the marketing people that are doing the emails, whatever else under the VP of sales, and we'll call it VP of sales and marketing. So today, the modern version of a VP of sales and marketing is called a Chief Revenue Officer. I'm curious if you sort of see the same thing, if you think that they are one and the same. They are a same animal under a different name. There's probably some good analogy about that, but I don't know right off the top of my head. And so in my theory, the reason why CROs in this realm thrive with a chief marketing officer is, with a fractional chief marketing officer, is because the CROs need the help. They don't want to admit it. They don't want to hire a really senior marketing person that is going to drive marketing strategy. So hiring a fractional CMO or contracting with a fractional CMO allows them to not admit that they need help. They're just renting the marketing expertise. They don't need to own it. Daryl's got a comment here. And Daryl, if you wanted me to promote you to a talking role, I'd be happy to. Just let me know. But Daryl's feeling is it's not the same thing, that CROs own the success too. In my experience, the VP of sales and marketing owns the success, same as a chief revenue officer. It just happens to be different titles, but that's my perspective. So, all right. Next up, number 2, emerging tech CEOs. So let's pick on the chief executive officers for a minute. They tend to really suck, like especially, and I'm making fun of everybody, so nobody's safe here. This is not a safe space. Tech-oriented CEOs, especially founding CEOs, really are product driven. They are perfectly designed for a product-led growth company. And they tend to have a really hard time understanding how to drive market demand for a product that they think should sell itself. And they think that they only need sales. They only need to have sales to drive, because all they need is they need more places to show off the product, to show off their SaaS application, to show off their service. And so therefore they need revenue. And so the title of CRO makes sense to a CEO who's trying to sell this idea to their board. And in my experience, that's actually these CEOs who, I'll put it in air quotes, suck, are the ones who are actually the best customers for fractional chief marketing officers, because they are not willing to double down on marketing, but they're willing to understand the path of marketing and what it can do for them. Number three, actually, before we go to number three, I wanted to back up a little bit to number one. Daryl, I appreciate you giving me a little bit more clarity here. The comment was CRO owns success too, and it's customer success. I think that what I have seen, and there's many people have seen a lot more than me, but what I have seen is that the CRO tends to be the VP of sales and marketing and doesn't exactly have post-sale responsibilities all the time. But that's a really good point, is who it does a CRO, should a CRO, is the job description of a CRO, not only getting the revenue in the door, but keeping the revenue, AKA customer success. I've seen about 40% of the time, yes, and about 60% of the time, no. So maybe we can have a conversation about a CRO versus a CMO versus a CCO, which is a chief customer officer I've seen in some environments, not to be mistaken with a CCO being a chief compliance officer. So lots of stuff there. And Chris, I just saw your note. Yeah, chief customer officer has started to emerge. Maybe we'll do a conversation. Maybe we should pick on chief customer officers or chief experience officers and the things like that that are designed for once you've got a customer in, how do you keep that customer? All right, so back to number three. If a company is hiring a chief revenue officer, they're very serious about growth. They don't know how to achieve it except for brute force sales. Now, I am talking about earlier stage companies, and in full transparency, I would say that 60% of my experience is in early and emerging, like Series A, which back in the day was like maybe up to $5 million in investment, VC funding. Nowadays, a Series A can be closer to 50 million. But it's the point where a company is trying to figure out what makes their great product great to others. And so they're serious about growth, but they don't know how to achieve it except for brute force. Hire more salespeople, bring more people on board, drive them forward. And then they need a chief marketing officer as a fractional basis more than a full-time basis, because all of their dollars are going towards sales team members. But then all of a sudden the sales team says, we have nothing to say. We have nothing as a leave behind, nothing as a PDF to send as a follow-up. We have no content marketing. And so therefore we're having to start the conversation at 0 instead of starting the conversation at 2 to get people to a 10 in order to buy. So if they're hiring a CRO, they're very serious about growth, and marketing is really there to support that growth. And a fractional CMO will help during that staffing up phase, that aggressive staffing up phase. Next up, number 4, companies tend to like a fractional CMO under a chief revenue officer because it prevents wasted energy. There tends to be a lot of confidence in a chief revenue officer to go after the opportunities, to understand the buyers. But when push comes to shove and a chief revenue officer is looking at a priority of what can we get closed in the next 30 days? What can we get closed in the next 60 days or 90 days? they take their eye off the ball about what's going to help us grow over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. A great salesperson is looking at the current sales cycle. A great marketing person is looking at the next several sales cycles. And a company, especially emerging technology companies, can't afford to take their eye off the ball. So adding a fractional CMO allows them to keep the eye on the ball of the short-term deals that have to keep, things running, while the fractional CMO can actually go and look out a little bit further. So it prevents that wasted energy. Number 5, and this is a dig on chief marketing officers, and this is probably a projection of me onto everyone. So I am sorry and not sorry, but CMOs tend to have BSOS, BSOS, bright, shiny object syndrome. Bright, shiny object syndrome. So what does that mean? And I apologize if that was really loud. CMOs have to live in both the creative world as well as the operational world. As a fractional CMO, helping out a company and helping out a full-time chief revenue officer, we as fractional CMOs can play in that bright, shiny object world and use it as an advantage to bring ideas to the CRO. While we can embrace our syndrome, it is actually an asset or a tool that people can use to their advantage for good instead of for bad. And so as a fractional CMO, you can embrace that bright, shiny object syndrome, as long as obviously you are maintaining the operational programs and processes and the machine of marketing. But I have found that, and again, firsthand experience, I have been an ICMO, a fractional CMO for a long, long time. And what I have found is that I really thrive in that because I can bring those bright, shiny objects of new ideas, fresh takes, and fresh approaches. And in fact, I proactively bring new ideas every month to the clients, whether they take them or not, no matter the level of engagement or not, I bring them new ideas. And that's why I think that a fractional CMO can really provide a lot more benefit than a full-time CMO, and can make a CRO look much better than they already are, is because we can bring the bright, shiny objects, and then we can, look like the hero to someone who can look like the hero for implementing these new ideas. Number 6, CROs are considered harder to find. CMOs, until now, have been easier to find. And I think this is a traditional thing, that if you are a good salesperson and you are a good CRO, you are in demand and you are passed around the VC and PE, internal networks. CMOs, there's an expectation that you need to be more vertically focused, industry expertise, or to solve a specific pain point to get companies to another level. CMOs have also been much easier to find historically than CROs. However, that's changed. And I would say I have learned about that in the last month and a half. And if you follow my emails or you subscribe to my blog posts, I've talked about this. CMOs are now are a big part of the Great Resignation. And I know it's not a popular topic, but it is the reality that CMOs tend to be less satisfied, less fulfilled, get paid less, and are not as appreciated, and can be picked on a lot more because of the visibility of the work that we do. And therefore, CMOs are resigning en masse. CROs are not. And so CMOs, who used to be easy to find, I wouldn't say a dime a dozen, but you can find a good CMO. It might be hard to find a great CMO. Now the tables are turned. Now, what I'm hearing from the venture capital community, from the private equity community, is it's taking 6 months, 9 months, maybe even a year to find a CMO that's good, not even perfect, but good. They can't find them, which is why GROW is really doubling down on the Great Resignation. I think it's why we've had over 600 people that have responded who are currently fractional chief marketing officers. So that's cool. All right, number 7. Earlier stage companies need a CRO more. Later stage companies need CMOs more. And I'm going to quote the great and mighty Dave, who gave me permission to quote, and I'll just tell you what he said. He said, startups struggle for the first few sales when they have less proof of performance. Successful CROs are solving that crucial problem. CMOs are more focused on media, of which startups can afford small budgets. Therefore, the CMO job is less important or prestigious or even impactful. When the company grows, the importance of the CMO roles reverse, or the roles reverse, where the CMO becomes inherently more critical than the CRO. And I really agree, and I like this perspective. So thank you, Dave. I appreciate what you brought to this. When you are a small company, you are brute force. So it goes back to an earlier data point that I had shared. When you are a more mature company and the sales have begun to come in, you can start to triangulate and bring on that intelligence to make the many, to go from one to many, that you are looking at a many to many versus a many to one approach. Got a comment here about focus on media. I don't think it's just media, and I don't know if that's the way that Dave intended to say it. I think it is limited budget and trying to find as much ways to get the message out with small budgets. So maybe media is the wrong term there. Okay, last but not least, and I am going to say this and tell you that this comes from my own first person point of view. You may disagree. It may demonstrate that I'm actually not that good as a CMO. It may hit and resonate really, really well. CROs get all the credit. CMOs get 1/8 of the credit. I'm going to say it again. Disagree with me if you like. CROs get all the credit. CMOs get 1/8 of the credit, unless sales are off. Then CROs get to blame everybody and CMOs get blamed. So I'll talk about this for a second. And again, comes from, first person. So first thing I'll say is, if you haven't heard this adage before, know it, write it down, own it. Revenue forgives all sins. When revenue is coming in, everybody is high-fiving, everybody is singing Kumbaya, everybody is feeling great. The moment that the revenue isn't coming in as fast as it should, or quarter review or quarter results are not where they need to be, fingers start to get pointed. Now, when revenue is coming in, as a chief revenue officer, whether they are a CRO that handles sales and marketing, or they're a CRO/CCO that handles marketing, sales, and customer success or customer experience, CROs will get all the credit. And then when the chief marketing officer is working on attribution or trying to associate deals with brand recognition, they get some of the credit. And so for this reason, as a fractional CMO, as a consultant, we don't have to worry about getting credit. And it doesn't have to feel like we're trying to play in a level playing field. When the CRO wins, we win as fractional chief marketing officers. When the CRO is struggling and they're not making their numbers, the finger doesn't have to get pointed at us, as long as we are there to help and guide and advise and really help, help them with being more successful. So that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points that I've gone over. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. I'm not going to tell you which ones are good. I don't know if you agree or disagree with some of these statements, but there, I said it. I've talked to many, many, many of you. I've talked to CROs. I've talked to VC firms. This is my perspective. I've also got many victory scars and battle scars in my days as a VP of marketing or a chief marketing officer, and especially as a fractional CMO, which is my favorite place to be. So that's it. That's the tweet. I guess I shouldn't say that anymore. Twitter is a cesspool of fuck-uppery, but that's all we have to say. Any questions or concerns, you've got my email address. Would love to have your thoughts and follow up. You can find this on YouTube, Vimeo. We're going to try to put this up on a Facebook live stream. We're going to try to put it up on a YouTube live stream. We're continuing to expand where we are and how we go out. But I'd love to get your thoughts. And don't forget to sign up to subscribe to our blog. If you go to growpowerful.io and under our resources, you'll see the blog, and we're pushing stuff out every couple of weeks. And that's all I have to say about that. So thank you, be well, mark it on, and we'll talk to you next time in about 2 weeks. Cheers.